You know that meme of being born too late to explore the worlds, too early to explore the stars, but just in time to work a minimum wage job that slowly drains you of your soul like a dementor? I think that's why people get so wrapped up in fiction. It gives people a way to explore new worlds away from our mundane lives. And science fiction has the advantage that the worlds it explores could hypothetically be real. After all, one could say Mars is just a really cold Tatooine or Arrakis. Stargate has a really good plot telling device for exploring new worlds via, well, the Stargate. Now, Stargate isn't Star Trek. Their main reason for exploration isn't to make contact with new life or simply for the sake of exploration, but to find new technology to defend the Earth from hostile aliens. It's done for military purposes, but that doesn't stop the premise and some characters seeing it as an opportunity to push that final frontier. So why is it most planets, even ones in different galaxies, look like the Canadian wilderness? Even places you think are not like Canada are still somehow Canada. Heck, it gets so bad sometimes, the actual places have names that are just Canadian. Here's a joke from one of the books about the characters pointing this out for Kelowna. Now, the out of universe reason is pretty simple. The shows were shot in Canada, so it's going to look like Canada. But that's not really a fun explanation. So in this video, I want to explore lore-wise why most planets look the way they do. Because as it turns out, there could be a few different explanations. And to clarify something, I joke about the worlds looking like Canada in the title and opening, but what I really mean is why are so many planets in Stargate so Earth-like? If the Stargate can lead to countless places, why do so many of them resemble Earth, and specifically a certain region in the Northern Hemisphere? The first explanation is simply looking at who built and placed the Stargates, the Ancients. Their history is weirdly well known, but lacking in a lot of details. But one thing we know about them is their origin, being the first evolution of the human form from another galaxy. And I think it is important to note that because it means they probably evolved under similar conditions to the humans from Earth. We don't see much of their home galaxy, but of the worlds we do see, they look to be very Earth-like. Granted, you could argue this was the doing of the Ori when they created their humans, but in the flashback in The Ark of Truth, when we see the earliest version of the Ancients, they are on an Earth-like planet. This can mean one of two things. First is that Earth-like planets are just a naturally occurring thing in this universe. If Earth-like planets are just a common occurrence in the universe, it makes sense for people using the Stargates to come across them. As when the ancients were building the Stargates in the wider network, it makes sense they would place the gates on planets that are naturally habitable for them. If you can place a device that lets you teleport between planets anywhere, why would you put it on, say, Mars, for example, if the universe is full of habitable worlds? A really good example I want to look at is from The Expanse. In that universe, the Martians had this dream of terraforming Mars into a green world. Though it would take over 100 years, it was something their whole society was dedicated to. But when the ring gates opened up, the dream kind of died because why spend 100 years trying to terraform a dead rock into a garden when there are suddenly hundreds of new habitable worlds to colonize within reach? However, if in Stargate Earth-like planets are just something that happens, why are some worlds with a Stargate not ideal for human habitation? At least not in the Canadian forest sense. Well, there could be a couple reasons. First, keep in mind the ancients are a very old race. We're talking about a race that has millions, possibly billions of years of history. We know they left the Milky Way for the Pegasus galaxy several million years ago. It's certain that over those millions of years, some of those planets would have changed. Maybe some of these worlds used to be lush forests, but now have become desolate deserts. In the episode Entity, one of the theories about what was on the planet was it came from something that arrived after the ancients placed the gate. And for all the failings of the ancients, I really doubt they would have intentionally put a Stargate on a planet next to a black hole. There's some other reasons the gates would have been placed on less than ideal worlds. Maybe it was for resource extraction, exploration, or establishing diplomatic ties with other races. This is a pretty good explanation, but there's another point to consider. Terraforming. It makes sense one of the most powerful species in the Stargate universe would have access to such technology. Though, oddly enough, we don't really see many direct examples of such technology from them. From what I could find, there are only two examples of such technology being directly linked to the Ancients. The first was in the Stargate Atlantis book Exogenesis, which makes sense since when the ancients arrived in the Pegasus galaxy, it was said they found it to be a galaxy where there was no life. Thus, they seeded life across thousands of worlds that in time bore the fruit of life in the human form. I have to imagine they must have used some kind of terraforming tech on these worlds, even if it was never directly stated. And they probably used a similar technology back when they lived in the Milky Way on some worlds as well. Which leads us to the Dakara's superweapon. Now, there's a bit of a misconception about what this was used for. I don't want to get too into it, I've been saving that for a video I've been putting off. But basically, in the show, we were told the ancients only used this to recreate the precursors to all life in the galaxy after the ancient plague nearly wiped them out.
Want to know the irony of it all? That device was originally used by the ancients to create life in the Milky Way. Well, recreated after the whole plague thing.
It doesn't appear to have been used for terraforming, but it can be used for that, as Anubis tried to use it to remake the galaxy. Still, despite the lack of examples, I think we can assume that they must have had it since the Goa'uld did have this tech and they borrow most of their tech from the ancients. And this would follow a similar train of thought from the first point. The ancients did the legwork, terraforming worlds, placing gates, and later the Tari would find these new worlds. However, there's yet another point to consider. The Tari are not the first race to use the gates after the ancients left. There was a race who used the gates after the ancients and long before the humans of Earth, leaving their own mark on the galaxy, the Goa'uld. Heads up, I'm not really going to talk about the Wraith because while they did use the gates in their galaxy, they didn't rely on them the same way the Goa'uld did. Despite the Goa'uld having ships, they still mostly relied on gate travel. We know they would occasionally move gates around to new worlds. They were the ones who brought the second gate to Earth. And like I said, they had terraforming tech they would use. Sokar terraformed the moon Netu into a hellish world to fit his theme of the devil. We did see in one episode the Goa'uld put a UV radiation shield on a planet that didn't offer much protection from UV radiation for their slaves so they could live and work there. The Alderac RPGs did give the Goa'uld terraforming technology, which they used to make worlds more habitable for their slaves or for newly conquered worlds. The major reason the Goa'uld did this was to get work out of their slaves. To quote a race of giant cuttlefish, tribute does not flow from a dead race. The Goa'uld didn't care about their slaves, but they knew they needed them to be alive to work. Though something of interest to consider is that we saw the Goa'uld's original homeworld, and shock of shocks, it's a very Earth-like planet. While it's most likely it used to be a more watery world a long time ago, given what we know about the Goa'uld today and their past, the fact it's so Earth-like in the modern day means that maybe this is just a good environment for the Goa'uld to live in. The fact that humans also live well in this environment too could be a factor, since they are the Goa'uld's main host race. So for the Goa'uld, it makes sense they would seek out these worlds to have their slaves work in, which at times they would go for the bare minimum, or they would seek these worlds out to live on. So the Goa'uld would seek out these worlds, maybe move a gate or two if they discover one without a gate, and terraform worlds to better suit their needs. And it's possible they did this in a less high-tech advanced way. There's a really cool idea brought up in the Alderac RPGs about how the Goa'uld would handle changing environments. Keep in mind, the extended media aren't strictly canon to the shows, but I really like this idea and it does have some elements from the show backing it up. This comes from the lore on the spirits, or the Narita as they were called in the book. Despite their world seeming to be just another copy of Earth, according to the RPG, this is not what the planet naturally looks like. When the Goa'uld arrived to mine the planet, they brought not only their human slaves, but wildlife as well. These animals and plants were seeded liberally around the Stargate, and since the Goa'uld were defeated by the spirits, said life has spread several hundred miles from the gate. Native life on this planet is not compatible with those from Earth, so the closer is one to the gate, the more Earth-like the area is, but the further one gets from the gate, the more alien the world becomes. The spirits only tolerate this alien infestation for the sake of the Salish, so they've turned the area into a sort of game preserve. I really like this idea, that Earth life is something of an invasive species spread across the stars by meddling aliens. We did see in the show that the Goa'uld took not only humans from Earth, but animals like horses and cats to other planets as well. And I know one of the books, I can't recall which, said that rats have become common on many planets as well. This idea also applies to the ancients too, if you think about it. I'm sure they are more careful about contaminating other ecosystems compared to the Goa'uld, but when they arrived in Pegasus, they claimed to have found an empty galaxy. But we know that there are non human aliens native to that galaxy. Whether or not they were present when the ancients arrived, we can't say, but consider the emergence of the Wraith in the show was due to the Aratus bug, a native life form feeding on humans introduced into its environment. I'm not claiming the ancients did anything wrong here, humans do this all the time, altering the natural world to better suit our needs. However, this can and does lead to unintended consequences. To sum up, there are a few reasons why so many places in Stargate are so Earth like, but I actually have an interesting idea combining all of them. Consider this: the first two shows, SG-1 and Atlantis, take place in the remains of the ancient sphere of influence in the local cluster. In this cluster, stargates lead to mostly Earth-like planets, either due to them being like that or being terraformed. However, by the time we get to Universe, which takes place very far from the local cluster, the worlds grow more alien. Sure, there are still plenty of Earth-like planets, supporting the idea that these are just naturally occurring, but we see a variety of more alien environments compared to the previous two shows. In Universe, the seed ships are just placing stargates for the destiny to follow. It wasn't made as a way for colonization, just exploration. Meanwhile, back in the local cluster, the ancients and the Goa'uld would have altered or sought out habitable worlds using the gates. So when the Tari begin using the gates, instead of boldly going where no man has gone before, they're going where many have been before. That's not to say there aren't interesting new worlds to explore through the gate, it's just that we shouldn't be that surprised so many of them share a certain look. What do you all think? Do you like the ideas present in this video? Or do you dislike these ideas and have some of your own? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, leave a like and subscribe, follow me on my social medias, and remember,
Doesn't look that different from home. Well, where there's oxygen, there's usually plant life, trees, water. There are a couple of differences.